Whakawā.
I call the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. Tēnei ka tāpiri atu aku whakaro ki ira I Waihoti I mui te aroro te parimata. Ka tukuna ngā mihi ki a koutou ngā memo te poari o Papawai me Kaikokirikiri. Kaikokirikiri. Tā koutou tarati e kahana ki te hāpai I ngā apuatanga e pāna ki ngā mātauranga o a koutou tamariki mokopuna. Heoi anō, he maha ngā kōrero I puta mai, ko tāku nei, hei tīpako I ētihi o ngā kaupapa kāre anō I kōrero here e koutou. Mr. Speaker, in offering a contribution to this debate, having heard all the contributions of other members, I wanted to comment on the modernisation aspects of the bill which are useful for any trust, but more importantly in the spirit of the amendments that are offered with this particular bill, situate my comments within the context of a trust wanting to determine for itself a way forward. Now, I don't have any connections to this particular area, so I did read with interest some of the initial aspects about the bill. Firstly, this, insofar as the scholarships in the original bill of 1943, 12(4)A, it said the provision of scholarships for children of British subjects of all races and for children of other persons being inhabitants of islands in the Pacific Ocean, but so that preference is given to boys and girls of the Ngāti Kahungunu tribe residing in the Wairarapa district south of a straight line passing through Akitio and Pahiatua, and then on to other Māoris or descendants of Māoris residing on the east coast of the North Island of New Zealand, and, failing such, to Māoris or descendants of Māoris of any part of New Zealand. Well, there's a broad definition of who were the original benefactors of this particular legislation, and we can see that over time the definition has really come right back to where the lands are, which is in the Wairarapa, and has been more specific in the new part of the bill, and which is section 9 of the amendments, which for completeness' sake, says that the provision of scholarships for post-primary education of children who have whakapapa in relation to the tangata whenua of Wairarapa. So that's a nice summation of who will be the benefactors of this particular bill. I listened with interest to my colleague Mika Whaitiri, who acknowledged the trust and the work that you do to fund students, and noted on the website that there are scholarships available to Hukarere Girls College, Rathkeale College, St Matthew's Collegiate, and Te Aute, and other colleges. You have a leadership and personal development grant as well as a scholarship for the stated purposes of the Act. And I'm sure that all manner of positive stories can be told about the assistance that have been given over a long period of time to those young people who have gained through their pathway in education. My colleague Adrian Rurofe talked about the rotation period for the board, and this is really good because the board can now implement its succession plan and actively ensure that they will have members that will regularly be able to be appointed to the board, gain skills, contribute to the legacy of the board, and plan actively in terms of succession. In the vacancy clauses, it's clear that should a trustee vacate their position for whatever stated reason in the bill, then a new member will be appointed for the remaining term of that particular member, and the rotation will continue. So that's very clear. And I'm sure that was the intent. I read with interest that under the contracting aspects of the board, there's no provision now the provision around oral contracts has been repealed. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Were oral contracts allowed? And I went back to the original bill and it said, yes, oral contracts were allowed by trustees of the of the board, but for no greater sum than £10. That was then amended to $20. But it's interesting to see that that's been repealed altogether, and that certainly makes sense to me. There are other aspects around removing the prescription of scholarships to Church of England only schools. And again, that links back to comments made by colleagues that as long as they whakapapa to tangata whenua of Wairarapa, then that is the criteria. So that's very clear. Now, I heard the contribution of the former member around the bill giving back, I guess, empowering the board to make its own decisions. And section 14 of the bill makes clear that the role of the minister removes the parochial oversight of the minister in terms of selling or leasing lands, makes it very clear that only the Clearville lands can be sold, not Papawai or Kaikokirikiri lands. And ultimately that decision is made on the determinations of the board and doesn't have to go back to a second or third party. Also, the role of the Māori Land Court, it appears, has been removed from this decision as well. So that really is affirming the ability of the board to get on with its business and make decisions as it sees fit for the investments, management of these lands and business operations. The other aspect that I read with interest, just to try and give some context to some of these changes, was the repeal provisions in relation to the leasing of certain Kaikokirikiri lands. Previously, leases were allowed for a period of 7 years with a right of renewal for the same term or a shorter period, and the rent was able to be determined by valuation in those renewal periods. And that's really been repealed, and the board again has the ability to determine for itself the leasing provisions. Mr. Speaker, the report on the operations of the trust now provides for copies to go to the Bishop of Te Upoko Te Ika, which is consistent with how the bill the membership of the board has been modernised to reflect the office of the Bishop of Te Upoko Te Ika. Previous to that, reports used to be sent to the Minister of Māori Affairs, the Synod of the Diocese of Wellington, as well as the General Synod. So what it's done is it's really, again, reaffirmed the relationship with the Church through the Bishop and its reporting lines of sight functions as well. I'm, again, to comment on the issue of te reo translation. It's a shame that we weren't able to achieve what might have been a good, I guess, template for small and useful bits of legislation like this by having dual language. Sadly, we weren't able to accomplish that based on the advice by the PCO. But in going forward, it is the intent of the Māori Affairs Select Committee to ensure that new bills coming to our committee are able to be planned for insofar as having dual language bills. I hope that gives some comfort to people listening to this debate, thinking about whether you should modernise your own bits of legislation, which will be useful, I'm sure. And in order to address the Te Reo Māori aspects, we, as a Māori Affairs Select Committee, under the good guidance of our Chair, will have better guidelines to be able to navigate our way through these particular issues, so that we not only have good, useful, modernised laws to guide the activities of trusts, but also can broaden the scope and role of te reo Māori within the legislature. So without much more said, Labour happily supports this bill in its third reading.
Mr Speaker.
I call Mac Ducey.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Pleasure and honour to rise and speak in full support of the Papawai and Kaikokirikiri Trust Amendment Bill in